Alright, Arghya. So if you want to just take us through your campaign so far, so give us your colour of t-shirt and A-frame, tell us your slogan,
Sure.
And if you want to kind of give us the basics of your campaign.
Sure. So my name's Arghya, I'm a fourth year medical student this year. I am running on the slogan of Gear Up for a Gear. Two different gears there in terms of vocabulary. I'm running basically on a platform that, I'm the everyday student. I haven't been involved in student politics so much in the past. I want to run so I can give a voice to, I guess the majority of students who aren't involved in union politics. I think my main policies will be cheaper meals for everyone. I know it's been peddled in the past, but this time I've got some policies and some financial auditing as to why this can happen. I think we're going to somehow monetize other parts of the union and see if we can get money out of that to focus funds towards places where they're not getting funds. I'm going to see if I can work with the CEO to work on contracts with media companies again to get more subscriptions, because I think the big part of the access thing in the past has been the Herald subscription or the Australian, and I think it would help if people got into that again. And I think another thing would be my involvement in the library system. I know it hasn't been a target for the union in the past, but there's I think, potential space for people who I will call the library angels, who will shut people up when they're talking too loud in libraries.
Sure. Cool. Well, we'll get back to your policies in a minute. Can we talk about kind of your place in university politics? So have you been aligned with a political faction on campus in the past?
I've never done anything to align myself with a political party.
Sure.
I've been involved in terms of being friends with many candidates in the past, both SRC and Union, as well as Senate. But myself, I've never really cared for it. I have run for SRC president back in 2010.
Okay.
On an independent basis, like no ticket involved, and I self-funded that campaign.
Sure.
How well did you go?
I got, I think, 400 votes out of the 4,000 voters, I think 10% of the primary vote, which still meant I was the first one kicked out, but I think, that, given on my whole campaign spending was $35, I think I did pretty well.
Yep. Cool. So how much do you know of the other candidates in this year's election?
I've met most of them for the first time this year.
Sure.
I did know a couple from before, but given my time last year and this year not being on campus, I don't have the chance to meet them so much. So I can't say I know them that much, and I think that's probably a good thing. For the example, if I were to get on board, I think it'd be good, going in fresh without having any deep-seated thoughts about anyone else.
Yeah.
Because we can see what has happened in the past.
Cool. And as you know, during USU board elections, preferences are made between different candidates. From what you know of the candidates so far, who would you be most likely to preference first and second?
I haven't thought about preferencing at the moment.
Sure.
I've had campaign assistants ask me if I should preference anyone, but I haven't thought about it at the moment, in all honesty. So.
Sure. Have you got any idea of which candidate you're most kind of ideologically aligned with, or your views on the union are most similar with?
Like I said, I don't know anyone in the campaign that well. I do know Cameron Cackerman. I think he'd do a great job, but
Sure.
I can't say I'd endorse him personally just yet.
Okay.
For that matter. But just because I know him personally, that's all.
Yeah. Okay.
Who will you vote for if you are elected for president of the USU? So exec elections come up later in the year.
Yeah.
Who would you vote for?
Depends on who's running, really. I guess any board member.
It'll probably be either Robbie, Tara, or Tim. So who would you vote for out of those three?
Well, I guess I know Tim quite well, and I know Robbie somewhat, and I've just met Tara as well. I think the strongest thus far has been putting forward their name has been Robbie, but in my sort of point of view. But I think either Tim or Tara would also do a great job knowing their track record.
Cool. Alright, well let's try and move on to some of the policy stuff that you just outlined before. Are any of those policies made public as part of your campaign yet?
Not yet, just because I haven't had the time to put it up, but hopefully at the time of recording tonight, I should put something up. And I'll probably release them progressively, one by one, so people have time to discuss them, people have, explain their thoughts on if I can improve on something.
Sure.
And then I'll release them. So.
Okay, great. And so you mentioned monetizing parts of the USU. Can you walk us through that policy in a bit more detail?
Yeah, I think selling Manning or Wentworth to corporate companies to have a big branded, ex-bank Wentworth building, or, ex-beverage flavour Manning bar.
Sure. Do you think that carries any problems for student control of their union?
Feasibly, But I mean, it depends on where the priorities are for next year or for the coming year, and where the union thinks it's going to get its money from.
Okay. From what I understand, the last 2 years of union budgets have been surpluses. The union has about $21 million of spending every year, and there's been a large financial audit in 2012 that didn't suggest any need to privatise buildings that the USU owned. Where does that kind of financial sense come from on your part, that it would need to sell the Manning House or Hermans to private corporations?
I think the basic need would be just to open up fund avenues for other things to do. So I know there are a lot of groups or societies on the campus that want to do things such as hold parties or arrange trips for their own learning or go to conferences and stuff. And I think to fund those other issues, we want more money because I mean everyone wants more money, but I think in terms to allow that to make the union a stronger thing for everyone. So if you're involved in some rare faculty society, you want money to go to a conference. You're not getting that directly from the union. They'll give you a few thousand, but they won't give you as many as you might like. And I think to strengthen the campus on those parts, I think we can get more money to help with that.
Okay, sure. And if you were given the budget being about $21 or $22 million, if you were to cut $1 million from somewhere in that budget now, where would that come from for you? So what's the kind of least important budget priority for the USU right now?
Not in terms of importance of how it is to the campus population, but in terms of budget priorities, I'd say the debates committee. Okay,
sure. So debates makes up about, I think, $330,000 of staff allocation.
Yeah.
Can you give us $600,000 on top of that?
It depends if we can pick and choose between reviews. Some reviews I've found have had their own financial backing and can get through without any help from the union.
Sure.
I feel there can be some. I don't know how much that actually adds up to.
Reviews is a little bit less than debating, I think, right now. Yeah.
So still got a lot of money to go.
Yeah.
Let's just cut Manning. Not sure, actually.
That's cool. And what do you think is the most then important program or area of funding that the USU currently undertakes?
I think clubs and societies. I think the more we give to them, the better the whole campus becomes as a whole.
Yeah, cool. Which clubs and societies have you been involved in the past?
Personally, I have been involved with the Sydney Uni Radio Group. I was on the exec for 2 years in 2008 and 2009. I've been involved with the Media Society, the Medical Society, Surgical Society at the moment. I've done a lot of Sydney Comedy Society when it used to exist in full flare. Hasn't done it so much anymore. Done a couple of things for SUDS in the past. Done some review stuff as well in the past. And I've actually, in terms of membership, I've probably been a member of about 60 or 70 societies over the years, but in terms of active membership, probably those ones that I've mentioned.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah. What do you see as the biggest issue currently facing students in Australia?
Students in Australia, I think, would be financial issues. Students, I think, being a student, especially in Sydney, is becoming a big financial strain on everyone, especially if you want to get an effective study plan and sort of routine out of it. I found through a medical curriculum which requires me to study, for 90% of my working week, it's actually hard to even work a part-time job or even a casual job. And to be able to study and to earn money to especially pay Sydney rents, which can often be in excess of $200 a week just for the accommodation, not talking about food or anything else, can be a big issue. So I think the union hopefully can work towards opening up some financial avenues for students if it means bursaries or something else. Because that's the biggest issue, I say.
Sure. What specific policies will you take to the union if you're elected to sort of combat this issue?
To combat this issue, as I said, the main planned policy I have right now is the $2 off every meal. I find that Access members, if they knew about this or had this sort of option, they would be buying more meals more often. And it would also increase the Access membership, hopefully. And I think in the long term, that would actually help create great savings for students. If they had an Access card, got $2 off every meal, if they spent, got at least one meal a day. I don't expect everyone to do that. I don't expect everyone to come in every day either. But I think in the long term, they could provide some sort of saving on a personal budget.
Sure.
You mentioned just before that you hadn't been too involved in the union before, and that part of the reason you're running is to give a voice to outsiders who haven't necessarily been involved in the union before, haven't been heavily involved. Why do you think that people don't get involved in the union right now?
I think a lot of people are just put off, first of all, by the $100 or $75 access card, just the cost of a one-off payment, which can be quite brutal as a single payment. I mean, there might be something in that for the future to have like a week-by-week debit. keep that on there. I think a lot of people don't find opportunities to use their access card too often. I mean, I personally have a coffee every day, so it probably works out for me, but I know a lot of people don't enjoy their caffeinated beverages, and they might see, you know, or if they're never going to save, if they might go to one review show every year, then that's not really cutting them. So I think that's one issue. The other is there might be people who are ideologically opposed to unions, and I know there are board directors who are still students who won't join the union because of that, or former board director, sorry. I think there are. I just think some people just don't even know about it. Like I currently am doing a medical degree, which involves a lot of students who've come from interstate or international countries, and they don't know what the USU is. They don't know what access is. They might see the odd sign, but they don't know what it actually does or what it means. And so I guess general education about the concept is probably useful.
Cool. If we could shift the discussion over towards, there's been quite a bit of talk recently from the union, its members, about transparency, launched obviously by kind of the long Rowie saga. If you had sat on board during that, would you have voted to remove Rowie from board, or would you have voted to keep him on?
My understanding thus far, which probably isn't that great, is that Tom possibly released documents that shouldn't have been released, or released information that shouldn't have been released to a member of an editing panel of a certain newspaper. Well, I guess if it is confidential information, that is a breach of, I guess, what his position role is on union board. So, based purely on that, I would probably vote him not to stay on.
Sure.
However, I mean, I don't know him personally. I don't know what he brings to the union. I don't think it should be discounted just as far as that, especially if it's a student union, which I think is a nice stepping stone to further, you know, levels of union or management later on. I think it's sort of, people should be given a second chance to, you know, right their wrongs, or at least explain their actions. And I don't think Tom got the fairest sort of deal out of that.
Sure. Cool. And more generally, do you think that there are problems with USU transparency right now, the accountability of board directors?
I don't know so much about the accountability of board directors. I think the annual reports and the documents that we get from the USU actually do that quite well. I'm more worried about the transparency of the finances of the USU. I've tried to just calculate some of my policies, and I think it's really hard to actually get direct financial information about the union, and it would be much greater if they could do it. I'm sure with freedom of information we could actually access it, but it's a lot of effort for something that, you know, I'm paying to be a member of, and a lot of people are paying to be a member of.
Yeah. So would you be pro making that financial information public? If you
I think if you've got, you know, however many members, if more than 1,000, I think you definitely need to make it public, at least to the members, even if it's like, you know, through an access login or something. I think it's worth.
Yeah, cool.
Ellie, you said that Tom didn't fulfil his union duties, and thus you would vote to kick him off. I imagine he would respond that he was doing his duties to the students, and not to his fellow board members or to the board itself. So how do you see, I feel like his answer seems to point to a different view of the union, so not as one catered to the sort of money-making side of the union, but one as an actual representative of students in general. So what do you view the union as in that sort of debate?
I think the union does represent members, and I know that it does also cater for students at a wider sort of thing, like if you've got like the Humanitarian Week and just International Week and all those things that are on campus, which I guess anyone could attend to. However, I think from that point of view, I think if Tom's suggesting he's doing the greater good for the student populace, perhaps he should have taken up a role in the SRC and done that. It's more based for its members, the access holders and the staff who do that. So I think in that sort of position, Tom has breached his duty.
Sure. And can you elaborate a little bit more on what you see as the main differences between the role of the USU on campus and the role of the SRC on campus?
The SRC, I think, in its definition of its initialism, is the Student Representative Council. It should be representing all students. It's, I think, more of a generalised body to cater for students from who are undergrads, part-timers, full-timers, and also with disputes within the, I guess, the university administration and bureaucracy as well. The union, while it's meant to, I guess, by definition, advocate for rights, I think it's more dedicated towards its members, and so it shouldn't account for all 100% of the students on campus. Just as I guess, those who scratch the union's back get scratched in a way of paying for access membership. So that's what I see the role of the SRC. I think both organisations have a role in advocating for women's and gender rights, for education policies, and also for general student welfare. But membership groups. Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's talk about the most recent president of the union, Hannah Morris. What do you think that Hannah's greatest achievement has been as president?
I think our most notable achievement has been, taking this Tom Rowley issue to the state level. Greatest achievement, I don't know. As a board, as a president, I think all she has to do is maintain the union and maintain the position it's been in. And I think, running the union at a profit is good enough that she's done. Because I think it's a team effort between the board directors to do everything together and to pass policies and to get stuff happening.
Yeah, sure.
So that would seem to suggest that you think the sort of status quo is satisfactory. Would you agree with that?
I'd like to think so.
Okay.
Cool. What do you consider to be the role of staff within the union, in particular the CEO of the union?
I think it's good to have a CEO. I think it's good to have someone, especially on a board which is made up of, I guess, full-time and part-time students who have other priorities and other conflicts of interest. I think it's good to have someone who's independent, who's paid to do a certain role and to fulfil tasks on that part. As long as Mr. Woodward does it, satisfactorily, I think, which he has so far, I think there's an appropriate need for it to occur.
Sure. There's been some talk from current board directors that the CEO's kind of aggrandized his role to the point that it's his vision and not theirs driving the union, so that he's making up most of the budgets now, that it's his strategic vision that's ultimately guiding the union's direction rather than the elected board directors. If you found that to be the case when you arrived on board, would you have a problem with that, and how would you go about fixing it?
Well, first of all, I haven't heard this, but if that is the case and I do get on board and have to deal with it, I would be quite disappointed if that's the case. I mean, if that's a subjective view, that might be something else, but I think if he is putting forward points and not allowing us to pass it, then it'll be quite worrisome. But I think hopefully, the balance of power lies within the board members to actually get stuff along and to actually block anything that might be one person's personal view, as opposed to what 12 people think together, or 13 for that matter.
Cool. Let's go back to the other policies that you mentioned. You mentioned something about the library system and what you called library angels. Can you give us a less coded details around that?
So the current planning for the library angels is that we will have paid unions, hopefully student members, as a casual part-time role or a part-time role, to stand around in libraries or sit around in a nice dedicated zone. And when there's, someone, if you're in a silent zone of a library and you need someone to shut up, but you're either too embarrassed or too busy or too engrossed in doing something yourself, I think it's worthwhile just texting a number. The angels will come up and they'll shush them for you. I know the current role of the librarian is to do this, but they're often busy doing whatever they do on their computers. And I think it'd be a good way to, involve students in the union and also get something out for everyone who's needs it.
What kind of people do you imagine would become library angels?
I was thinking about the St Andrews rugby team, but otherwise, I think anyone who really wants to. I think all you have to do is just tell people to shut up, and that's the library rules. The library's done very well so far in having a silent zone, a quiet zone, and a public or shared zone. That to enforce them, I think you need some people there. It won't be anything violent. It will just be,
Special kind of person.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you had costed your policies before. Did you got an estimate for how much it's going to
At the moment, I'm thinking Fisher and Law will need them. Scitech's probably no hope. So no, this will probably be off the top of my head at the moment to cost it. But if we pay, I guess, a nice competitive rate of about $20 an hour or $25 an hour for people to sit around in the library, I think, 12 hours a day, maybe 2 angels in each library. Hopefully that should work out not too bad for the union, which is running a surplus.
Sure. You mentioned cheaper meals, and I'm interested, would you be aiming for the union to provide cheaper meals to its members or to all students?
Its members. So it'd have to be access members, I think. So it'll be $2 off for any meal that's less than the access discount. So currently the access discount for most places is 15%, and if your discount is less than $2, you'll get $2 off bulkily of that.
Sure. Cool.
So you said before that one of the biggest issues you see facing students in Australia is the cost of living. But if your policies will only help those who are already in the sort of access tent as such, surely those who won't be able to afford the one-off $75 or $100 access fee to get in are the ones who probably need these policies the most. So how do you sort of help in that situation?
I mean, yes, that could be true if you say it one way, but I mean that's also presuming that those who are in such situations wouldn't get the access card. But I think, again, like I just said, then that possibly we could do a week-by-week debit thing, and if people want to opt out, they can opt out, and they've only paid what they can or what they have for that time period, and gain the benefits of the access system. If they see it works out to be value for money, then they'll probably stay on. If they don't, then that's it. I think the university at the moment, though, has a pretty good system in helping out students that really need it. There are a number of bursaries, and I don't think they need access personally, like just by itself, to get them out of this, or the USU for that matter.
Let's switch it over and talk about your campaign. Obviously, every year it's quite competitive. Obviously, there are 8 people running this year for 5 places. Do you think you've got a realistic chance of getting on board?
Look, I have no idea how I'll go.
Sure.
I think it'll be nice if I don't come last, but I mean that's just based on how much effort I'm putting in, and it's a realistic sort of expectation, just given how much time I have and what resources I have at my disposal to campaign. I still don't say no, because I think it's quite possible to get on board, and you never know where your votes come from, especially on the access polling day where anyone can actually vote. I guess like they don't have to be access members per se, not anyone, but so I think there's a lot of potential.
Cool. So you've seen the other campaigns today, or a little bit of them at least. How sort of do you feel that you'll do in comparison to that?
I think my pun's up there the best. I've seen what they've done. I think they've started with the stock standard sort of tables on Eastern Avenue. I think in comparison to them, it won't be as in your face, but I think I can still manage enough. I think I can manage enough rhetoric to get people to know what I'm about and see what I can do for the union.
Cool. You mentioned before that your campaign's not going to be heavy on the ground for at least the first little while. It's going to be mainly focused on online. Can you talk us through that online strategy a little more?
I think just using most multimedia available at our purpose. So you're looking at Facebook, Twitter, possibly a Tumblr. There might also be some videos in addition to photos. But yeah, just to use the multimedia.
Cool. And so, did you take the election grant given to you by the USU?
I did for T-shirt purposes.
Just T-shirts?
Well, I've got the election grant.
Yeah.
Should posters arise, then I will use it. If not, I'll be happy to return the money to the union.
Okay, cool.
Your current campaigning strategy seems to target the people who would be most clued in to campaigning already through knowing people who are into the university politics scene. So sort of how will your campaign appeal to, I guess, the broader student base, which isn't as sort of clued in to these debates and discussions?
I think I spend time with people who aren't clued in more than the other people. I spend every day with a variety of medical students who, just by nature of being graduate students, aren't so involved in the union. I haven't got the exposure to it. I'm more than happy to cater to them and possibly have policies in terms of peripheral sites around the university's campuses. And I mean, that's probably my basic sort of audience. Like, I want to get out to those people. I think it would have to be through different connections, and I guess, I guess postering in areas where there aren't posters. I think there are quite a few around the university which still fall under regulations where you can poster, where I think union candidates haven't hit in the past. Just any exposure is good, I guess.
Cool. From our understanding, the board directors we've talked to, what it takes to be an excellent board director is giving quite a large part of your time each week to being in the office, writing reports, working with working groups, talking to students. You've mentioned that obviously you study medicine, that with you working in a hospital, you're going to have to spend quite a bit of time away from campus. Do you think that's going to be able to, do you think that will affect the time that you can commit to being a USU board director?
It'll affect the time I can commit to being a director. I don't know if it'll affect quality. I think quality can be maintained regardless.
Sure.
It just depends on discipline and how I spread my time.
Okay. Can you give us a kind of time estimate of how many, I suppose, hours a week you could devote to being a board director over the next 2 years while you're elected?
Okay. If I were elected, I'd probably be working a 9-to-5 job most of the time and then doing a master's course at night time. That would probably, the master's courses being very self-directed would allow me time on campus during the evening. So, I mean, I can do my paperwork at any time, so I could probably offer 6 hours a day to that. And in terms of consulting and stuff, I could probably offer 4 or 5 hours a week.
Sure.
In doing that.
Okay, great.
Do you think the union is broadly... So these sort of elections would seem to be biased against those who do degrees such as yours and are busier. Is there any way you see of sort of solving that problem, including more students like you from more diverse faculties in the directorate?
It's not that long ago that Sydney MedSoc was actually the biggest sort of union member when the union was not voluntary. I guess in terms of getting people to join up, it would just be targeting benefits to them. At the moment at my hospital, where I'm usually based every day, there's access, members actually get 15% off their coffee at the local cafe. If we can do that for a lot of the hospitals, or just even Cumberland campus, Mount Street and stuff like that, I think there's a lot of options in terms of calling people in.
Yes, right. Any more questions? Cool. Thanks very much.
No worries.
Nice to meet you.
That was a lot of that. That was on the top of my head.